Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to Answers Life. I hope everybody's doing great today. For those of you that have been watching me recently, I've been out here looking at houses. I've been going back and forth from here to Indiana on my days off of work. And I'm not going to lie, it's getting very tiresome going back and forth from here to Indiana. But I really want to purchase a house up in Indiana. And so far, things aren't looking too good. I'm going to be honest. Now, before I go on in this video, I'm going to keep my promise to you guys. That house that I showed you guys that sat on a half an acre, that house was up in Indiana. That was a house that I did a home inspection on. That was a video that I put out a couple of days or so ago. Now, I understand that video was a little long, it was boring, and a lot of you weren't really interested in it. I wanted to put it out there anyways for some first-time home buyer that comes across my channel. Hopefully they'll come across my channel and watch that video and get an idea of how a home inspection is supposed to go and some of the things that inspectors generally look for. That's the reason why I put that video on the channel. But no, I did not buy that house up in Indiana. Now, real quick, this is how it all went. After that inspection was done, I thought about putting in like a lowball offer on that house. And then I was thinking, you know what? Forget a lowball offer. I'm not going to buy the house at all. So I sat on it for a couple of days. And then I decided to call my realtor. And I told my realtor that the house had too many issues going on. And I did not feel comfortable moving forward in purchasing that house. Because as some of you who watch those videos may already know, or maybe may have seen it without me even mentioning it. I mean, for one, the house had mold. It had active carpenter bees. The floors were crooked. The house had an abnormal amount of moisture, causing the furnace to rust, causing the gas line to rust. And I know all those issues are very much repairable. It's just that when you're looking to buy a house for investment purposes, you don't want to be spending too much money on home repairs or too much time on home repairs because it's going to cut in on the profit that you'll potentially make on the house. And then, of course, I was talking to a couple of people in the community that knew, that been in that area for some time, and they were commenting how the area has gotten worse, and you got a lot of people in the area now doing illegal substances. And a couple of the people in the area came over to me, and they took the time out of their day and they gave me a little brief history of some of the trouble that has been had over at that property. And again, I don't want to get too much into detail about it. And then also, whenever it rains, like I mentioned before on the last video I made, that front area tends to flood real bad from what I hear whenever they get a lot of rain. So due to all the issues of that property, I did not feel comfortable buying that property. And people, and some of the information that I found out about the property, I mean, clearly it was not listed on the MLS. And even when I look at the property disclosure, it was not on the disclosure either. And even the home inspector couldn't tell me certain information. So there's certain pieces of information that I found out about the property that were important, that were significant, that helped me come to my decision to not buy the property. And that information were by the locals who lived in the area. Which is why I tell you guys, whenever you look at buying a property, yes, if you're interested in a property, you need to hire a home inspector. Yes, it's always good to have a realtor, to have a good realtor that's seasoned, that you can trust. But also, and this is something that a lot of y'all tend to discount. This is something that many realtors tend to discount, and I guess if you're a realtor, it would be for a good reason. But if you're a buyer, this is something that you should never discount. Whenever given the opportunity, always talk to people within the neighborhood. It could be the next door neighbor. It could be the person across the street. It could be the person down the street. It could be even somebody walking by the house that might live in the area, that might know the house very well. But always talk to neighbors. And I can't emphasize that enough. Because initially, I wasn't even going to be present at the inspection. The inspection, I wasn't even going to be present at that inspection. Because the day that that inspection was scheduled, it was on a day that I was off of work, which I only had one day off of work. So I'm thinking I'm not going to even show up because I would have to drive all the way up to Indiana and then come back down to Alabama, which for me, it would have been a 12-hour drive. Well, it would have been a 24-hour round trip drive. And I would have had to complete that drive in a day's period, which would have been extra rough because the next day I had to work. But what happened was I decided at the last minute to just go ahead, go up there. Whenever I get tired, I just go in the back of my van and I sleep. And then I get up and I keep it going, which is what I did. And I am so glad I chose to show up to that home inspection. I'm so glad I did show up. Now, for one, I'm glad I showed up because, for one, I got the opportunity to speak to a couple of the neighbors over there that told me a lot of information. They gave me a lot of information about the neighborhood and about the house, at least the exterior of the house. And they also told me that illegal activities went on in the house, which, yeah, I'll leave it like that. So they gave me all that information. And as far as the home inspection itself, sometimes if you have a home inspection scheduled and for whatever reason you don't show up to the inspection, that home inspector may not be honest. The home inspector might, maybe normally they might do maybe a 4-hour inspection. But if you don't show up, they might go there for an hour, take a few pictures, just to make it appear like they did something, and then leave. And in the meantime, there's going to be a crap load of issues that the property has that you had no idea. The inspector didn't even look for it because they just went, took some pictures, and got the hell up out of there and got their money. Because there's nobody there watching them to make sure they did their damn job. Now, I'm not saying that the inspector I hired would do some stuff like that. I would hope not. But I'm just saying those are the kind of things that tend to happen in the real estate world. Just like you got this honest agents, you also got this honest home inspectors. And I told you guys this before. You got a lot of these home inspectors that will make what I call a sweetheart deal with the agent. The agent will pay him X amount of money. Hey, whatever you do, say this, don't say that. The inspector will go along with it, and then the agent will pay that inspector way more money than what you done pay that inspector. So that inspector will now have give me a second. I gotta think what the word is. They will now have an incentive to basically lie to you. So I got to thinking about all that, and it's like, you know what? Let me go ahead and show up, and that's why I showed up. Cause I showed up because one, I wanted to make sure my inspector was being truthful. Not that he wouldn't be truthful, but I wanted to make sure. And secondly, I have the neighbors. A couple of my neighbors are outside, and they were kind of staring at me. So I decided to take that opportunity and go talk to some of them. And they gave me they spilled the tea on that property. And I'm glad they did. So, armed with that information, along with the inspection report, along with just some of the basic knowledge I have when it comes to houses, because I brought and sold a crap load of them, I decided to not move forward with that house. So, for you newbies out here, for you first-time home buyers out here, not only do you need to hire your own inspector and not go by any suggestions that your agent might make, but you also, on the day of inspection, need to be there in person with the inspector. That way you can ask your inspector certain questions. Like if you see a spot on the wall that doesn't look right, you can ask the inspector, hey man, what's that spot? The inspector can tell you what it is. Whether or rather not, it's a big deal. They can tell you all that. Or if something's not working and you notice it, you can ask them, hey man, what's going on with this? Or two, when the inspector gets done inspecting, any decent inspector that knows what they're doing, they'll walk you through the property and they'll point out everything that they've seen. Now, obviously, they're going to put it all on a report for you to look at, but before they make out the report, what they'll do is they'll walk you through the property, they'll show you everything. Hey, you got mold over here, you got mildew over here, this outlet's not working, that outlet ain't working, stuff like that. Anything that may need repair, they'll suggest you to do the repair, all that good stuff. And some of what I'm talking about was on the video that I made the other day, which is why I put that video out there. So, yeah, I am definitely not buying that property that you guys saw that sat on a half acre. I mean, honestly, I fell in love with the property initially because it sat on a half acre and the property was located in town. I thought that was neat. So I'm thinking, okay, well, whoever I rent it out to, they got all the amenities of in town and it's just on a half acre. And honestly, I was also thinking that if I ever decided or had to leave Alabama for any reason and I went back up to Indiana, it would have been the property that I would have moved into. So when I was looking at buying that property, I had renting it out and making money off of it in mind. I also had in mind potentially moving into it myself at some point. So I was trying to be strategic with that particular purchase. But after everything was said and done, I just didn't think it was a good idea to buy the property, and therefore I didn't buy it. And on top of that, one of the neighbors who regularly attends the town meeting, they were telling me all the new restrictions that the town had on a lot of the lots. You can't build this, you can't build that, you can't do this, you can't do that. I didn't really care for all the restrictions, so that was another deal breaker for me as well. So these are all the reasons why it's important to talk to neighbors before you purchase a property. In fact, I would advise you guys to, I mean, as a part of your property inspection process, talk to at least one neighbor. Because that conversation you have with at least one neighbor could change your whole mind on whether or whether or not you buy a particular piece of property. So that's my update for the property. I wanted to keep my word on that. Now I was going to talk about something else, but I don't want to make the video too long, so I'm going to cut it right here. And I will see you guys on the next video.